Most people are already artificially intelligent, and when you look at and you're dealing with AI, it almost is like putting a mirror to your mind. It's not about whether it's some physical machine, right? Technology is about art, skills, and craft and how you use a thing. So your mind is its own technology, and most people don't know how to use the technology of their own mind. And most people walk around as artificially intelligent already. Because if you look at it, artificial intelligence, it's programmed and it's pre-programmed to have these interfaces that react and respond certain ways. It doesn't have its own programming that it programmed within itself. It's not organic intelligence. Finding that stillness every day, right? And you can hear your original thoughts. You can hear your God self versus to be a reaction of the world. I think is the most important because it constantly refocuses me on what is important. Like, what am I doing this for?
Welcome to Deeply Well, a soft place to land on your journey. A podcast for those that are curious, creative, and ready to expand in higher consciousness and self-care. I'm Devi Brown. This is where we heal. This is where we become. Welcome to the show. As always, I'm excited. I feel like on this show, we get into the fibers of so many veins of thought that just give us a chance to kind of savor it and dive deep for the weeks to come. And this episode, I'm certain, will be no different. Today, we have a very special guest joining us on the show, 19 Keys. 19 Keys is a thought leader, futurist, technologist, and entrepreneur. His dynamic approach to empowering individuals stems from a unique blend of metaphysics, mindfulness, business acumen, and cutting-edge technology. As a forward-thinking leader, 19 Keys is dedicated to shaping the future by understanding AI and technological innovations, while also teaching these concepts to our culture. Having overcome significant challenges in his early life, 19 Keys is now committed to sharing the lessons he's learned, inspiring others to transcend their circumstances and limitations. His work as a motivational speaker and author is complemented by his innovative ventures in various fields, including technology and digital media. His award-winning show on the Earn Your Leisure platform, High Level Conversations, exemplifies his role as a futurist, sparking influential dialogues on technology's impact on culture and society. As a co-founder of Goldwater Corp., the Block World Order, and High Level Media, 19 Keys has emerged as a pivotal figure in personal growth, technology, and future-oriented thought. His insights are sought after by media outlets, top businesses, and leading brands for his perspective on building a technologically advanced yet human-centered world. His message continues to resonate globally, inspiring and educating on the transformative power of technology and AI. Welcome to the show.
That was a nice bio. It was the first time I heard it.
It's always something, right, when you take it in? How does all that land? How did it feel to hear all that, especially thinking of the early life and the early challenges and all the ways that you've created yourself?
Well, it's interesting because I was going over this yesterday, just putting together my whole story, going over what were like my biggest adversities, challenges, triumphs, what are my most endearing, greatest beliefs. And you really are putting your life in front of you. And you can start to see how everything blends together to make you who you are and for who you're going to be. Because when I take myself back to early days, right? There's some footage that I often share when I was young and I was speaking on stages, as I do today, about social issues, about science, right? We went to a private Black Muslim school and they had it separated by gender and things of that nature. And I think that early influence of falling in love with education and developing my skill sets and my talents and seeing them play out on stage and getting that feedback from others was like the training ground to who I am. And then having the diversity of being in the streets and dealing with all the adversities that I did and all the adverse childhood experiences that I have, I think gives me a unique qualifier to wear these different hats, you know what I mean, to empathize and have compassion for different people
Mm.
across the planet.
It really gives such a profound ability, and this is what I'm hearing and what you're saying, to just divinely translate the message to
Hmm.
be exactly what is needed in the moment and with the demographic that you're talking to.
100%. I think that right now there's just so much information out there, and we need curated sources
Mm.
because we actually don't even have the time to find the right sources, right? People are busy trying to make a living, trying to survive. So how much time can people afford to actually research,
Yeah.
right? To find the right source for themselves. So it's good when you have a trusted source, right? Because they're eliminating that time that's necessary for you to have to go, how do I second guess this or third guess this and find another source and cite this and figure out this is correct. So it's good when you have these people or entities that you trust in a world where there's so much fluff, in a world
Mm.
where anybody
Whew.
can tell you anything and it sounds good. I was talking to a friend of
Oh my
mine
God,
today.
so much parroting.
We was talking about having a technology, a software as a service to where, it basically allows you to take any information that you see, put it into this software to see, number one, to check the tone, to check the cite the sources of it, to
Mm.
understand the type of journalism is it, because sometimes a person can put out a hit piece and people can take that as fact. Sometimes a
Right.
person can have something that's opinionated or a theory and people just believe it. And so it's like the internet has us all in the same class, but we all at different grade levels.
Yeah.
So, it's easy
My
for people of
God.
low IQ to, oh man, I believe this because this person said it. And then everybody else who's smart, like, man, I ain't real. I ain't even paying attention to that. And they keep on
Yeah.
going. So that's the dangerous thing, is that we need things to be curated better for us and not just these community notes and fact checkers that the social media platform give us because they have a narrative and agenda that they want to push. Something that we can use for ourselves to contextualize information.
Mm. God, everything that you're saying, yes. And it's so interesting. And I feel like, just especially in this season of the show, we've been exploring it quite a bit. But, it's like when everyone can be a broadcaster,
Hmm. Integrity.
there's no integrity. And I think for a lot of this work, especially when it comes to what we're now, referencing as healing, spiritual integrity is paramount.
Hmm.
And there's so many people that, and I'm not saying, and y'all know listening, I always preface this, we're all having so many different experiences in the midst of this, and whatever is your breakthrough is worthy and valuable. But so many people have been peer learning, which is based on one person's specific
Yeah,
experience with whatever it is they're sharing. And it's usually at such a surface level of thought. And that's okay for awareness, right? To like give you the seed of interest, but it's so important for masters to
hmm
take up space. And so many masters, you kind of want to just go off to the Himalayas and
yeah,
not be in the midst of humanity because all the things. But mastery learning to me is so important, and the path of integrity,
absolutely.
as you mentioned.
Well, I mean, just thinking about that difference between, like, you can become an expert at something, right? Becoming very well informed on it. And you can be an expert to someone else because you know more than them,
Mm.
right? But your level of expertise is subjective to other experts and whether they go to you as a source as well, right? And then it goes towards how long have you actually been in this field, right? So it's the longevity, and then it's the experience,
And are you
right?
interacting with the
A
field?
hundred percent.
Not just reading the books about it, but are you like observing? And yeah.
So you can be well informed on anything, but actually having the ability to apply it, that's completely different. Only masters know how to have a complete mastery over a thing
Mm.
because you have delved into the level of the initiate, right? And developed yourself through trial and error, right? To go into mastery. And just because you've been into something for a long time don't mean you're a master. Having a complete control over and understanding of something, I think, is what makes one's a master, and your ability to utilize it, not just to know it.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, divinely said. So, with your background growing up in the Muslim faith, but then also having what I'm kind of perceiving as another level of awakening at some point in your journey. How do both come together, and how, if you did need to forge a path kind of with two experiences happening, how did that play out for you and how did that shape you?
I think that it's always been one for me. It's just having a deeper layer of understanding what it is.
Mm,
It's like in religion, we use a lot of different words. And when you go into the root meaning of it, right, for yourself, then it becomes an experience,
mm,
right? So, in Christianity, people talk about Christ, right, and talk about Christ consciousness and things of that nature, but that can mean something different for each person that's in that room. When you go into, you can study a science and it can reinforce your spiritual understanding of something, right? You can study physics and now you have a deeper layer of interpretation between what you're doing. Or someone can call it, synchronicity, right? Somebody can call something clairvoyance, and there can be a scientific way for one to enhance that. Or one can say, well, this is my spiritual practice of doing that. Whatever language that you use, right? Whether it's religion, whether you're saying Islam, there is a way of everything, right? There is a law to everything. So for me, on my pathway of deepening my own Christ consciousness, if you will, right? I think that there's different methods. But when I started to go back and I studied one thing over here, then I went back and I read what I had learned previously, they were really the same thing,
mm,
right? I just had a deeper layer of understanding because some people, as we talk about that classroom, I can go to a mosque and it can be said one way inside the mosque, but I may be able to understand it differently if a scientist tell me, but just because that's the way my interests are peaked towards different type of information, right? But that doesn't mean that they're not saying the same thing. And we're all customized and different as far as how we are as human beings. So the way we interpret things or who tells us or what source or how we relate to it, I think it's all reinforcing the same thing over and over. All religions are really saying the same thing. All spiritual practices are saying the same thing. There's certain develops of gifts that you can get. You can study on human design and understand a gift, right? Or, you can study, whatever a person does, in their particular field of science or spirituality, and then that's how they develop theirs. But to me, it's all routes to the same God. You feel me? So I never look at it as a separation. I've studied things in Islam and I thought I was studying the opposite, and then I come to find out it was the same. I just didn't understand this at first. I didn't understand
mm,
how this may have connected to the chakra system, right?
mm.
But they were both explaining the same thing. One was explaining as Kundalini, one was explaining as Christ consciousness, one was explaining as, doing a salat, right? But to me, it was all leading to the same thing.
Mm. I love that. And I love the way that you expressed all of that. That's the path to me. That is the path. There's so many roads to the truth. And ultimately, it just depends on what period of time you were alive, what continent you were on at the
Mm-hmm.
time. But there is just so many ways to Creator, to God. There's so many ways to unlocking kind of the potency in oneself and the ability to just get these earthly superpowers.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of gifts. It's like you can develop the ability to understand what your enemy or others are thinking before they think it, right? And in some spiritual circles, they may look at that as like a psychic, intuitive thing. And then you could be talking to somebody from the military and they can say that's strategic general thinking,
Mm,
right? But it's the same exact thing. So when I say like there are two different routes, it really also depends on, what you're using it for. Then you take this school of thought, right? But it's all training to me. Like I've developed multiple gifts in my life, the ability to see in the future, the ability to see in my enemy's mind, to understand those steps ahead. That's the true, wisdom of foresight. My brother Nuri Muhammad has a book out called Mathematical Mind, and he speaks upon the three sights of hindsight, insight, and foresight,
mm,
right? Being able to see in the past, being able to see in the present, and being able to see in the future, right? And it's a very powerful thing when you can do all of those at once. and understanding time, not as chronological of backwards or forward, but understanding that things are happening simultaneously and there's a cycle of effects, there's cause and effect. So I think we all use these different languages and it makes us feel like we know something. And then we pit it against each other because this person uses that one and they're saying that one. And then my mind always goes to what is the point that you're making though? What is the application? One, a parent can say, I want you to go to school, to be rich, to get you a job, right? Start you a family. Is that the only route? Or is that the only route you know? Because then I can also be an independent creator and do that very same thing. Would you be proud of me if I got the same result? So we become egoistic and selfish and we want people to follow our route and our path, right? Not because we want them to get the result, but we want to feel connected to them. In some ways, we want to have control over them. I don't teach in that capacity. I lead by example. If I inspire you from the way I live my life, right, then that to me is the best way to lead. That to me is the best religion. So I don't try to even, we always taught there's no compulsion in Islam, right? There's nothing to argue about. There's nothing to debate about for me. You feel me? Because even when we start debating, what happens is it doesn't mean that either one of us are right? Because I can take a source knowledge that is 100% correct, but I might not have the ability to defend it at that moment. And just because you have some statistics or facts or you understand the Socratic method of making me feel like a fool at that moment and you feel like you've won, but that doesn't mean you are actually correct or right. So for me, I don't debate to people about things that I'm not a master in because another person may feel like they right only because they was able to fool you and not because they were. So, and I think that we have a lot of intellectual masturbation that happens in, the world to where everybody wants to get their opinion off.
That's so good. 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 I think in this moment in history, too, where to an earlier point, we just have so much information on a planet of 9 billion people, just so much saturation, so many thoughts happening. I think the telltale sign is always, but is the person speaking to you embodied? Does the person speaking to you live that? Or is it all intellectualized information? Or are they in moment by moment creating through choice and through the way that they tend to their bodies, tend to their spirits, tend to their souls? What does your daily practice look like that kind of feeds who you are and the work you're sent here to do?
I think it's my daily studies that are the most. I know for every single day there's something that I'm working to enrich my mind or spirit. Whether I'm taking some time out of stillness for myself to just think, which I think is probably my most important practice, is finding that moment of stillness. Because I look at stillness as darkness, right? You're in that womb of self, right? And you can hear your original thoughts. You can hear your God self. And to me, being able to do that, I think centers me closer and closer to the God within daily, especially in a world where everything is trying to influence you and you don't know what your original thoughts are.
Yeah.
Right? So finding that darkness every day, finding that stillness every day to be within myself versus to be a reaction of the world, I think is the most important because it constantly, refocuses me on what is important. Like, what am I doing this for? Right? You get to that point, you can have a level of success or money or this. Then you come back and you in front of yourself in the mirror, like, what am I doing this all for? Right? Then you start asking, what are we doing this all for? You go on social media and everybody's opinions and attacking each other and all of this. And it's like, what do we even want? So I feel like it's that repositioning daily. Reminding myself, what the hell do I want out this world? What do I want even from a legacy standpoint? That meditative time, that workout time. I think, we got our mental, our spiritual, our physical, our financial, right? If you can do something to kind of seed those every single day, I think you would be balanced. Because all of those, once they're not fed, right, they create an imbalance within your system, right? And that's when you become sick. So I'm going to work out, right? I'm going to read and learn something. I'm going to have that stillness time, right? I'm going to focus on my aspirations and my ambitions. And each one of those things are feeding a different sector, right, within my life that allows me to look at that pie chart and see wholeness.
Come on, 19 Keys. Come on. You better teach. God, that is so, so, so good. And the style of meditation that I've been doing for close to 15 years, the style that I teach, it's called primordial sound, and it's rooted very similar to TM, but it's rooted in having a mantra in Sanskrit that you repeat internally to yourself, and the vibration more so than the meaning of the word kind of shakes loose and amplifies and does all the things inside. But the piece that you're speaking to with like the daily science, but especially the self-inquiry, that style of meditation is rooted on 4 particular questions that you ask yourself every day, which is, who am I? Don't answer it. What am I grateful for? What do I desire? What do I really want? And how can I serve? And I think that piece about how can I serve is what closes the loop. It's what kind of brings the wholeness, the completion of any inquiry, any cycle of mastery. It's, and what are you giving? And how are you serving? And how are we advancing ultimately humanity? Because we're here for our human experience. I'm so interested to talk to you about AI. So I'm somebody that is trying to reconnect deeply and slowly to like natural life. So I've taken TVs out of my house. I have like a landline phone, and that's how I make phone calls, and I have clocks
A
everywhere.
landline phone, okay.
Truly. No, can I tell you though, it's the best feeling because for those of us that were born in a certain period of time, I'm born in the late 80s, it's like hearing a phone ring in the house and not knowing, I miss that kind of surprise. Like I miss that kind of feeling of not being in control or like, you know.
But you got
just,
caller ID, don't you?
Yeah, but you know, it's not like the same because you're just grabbing the phone.
I need to know who I'm ignoring.
Well, also like 5 people have the phone number, but, and I have clocks everywhere. And, you know, a big thing for me is just, I have to escape technology a lot, but I know that's not necessarily conducive to the society that we are growing in and that's expanding. So I'm so curious with your vision, and I've been checking out like a lot of your content on social, especially around AI. I find it so interesting, everything that can be done and all the ways that it can be useful. But I'm curious if at some point, like, how do you see AI really fluidly interacting with the human experience? And does it take away the human experience?
I think yes to all of those things. What I care about is the vision and the end result in which we want to manifest. And technology itself is not about whether it's some physical machine, right? Technology is about art, skills, and craft and how you use a thing. So your mind is its own technology, and most people don't know how to use the technology of their own mind. And most people walk around as artificially intelligent already. Because if you look at it, artificial intelligence, it's programmed and it's pre-programmed to have these interfaces that react and respond certain ways. It doesn't have its own programming that it programmed within itself. It's not organic intelligence. So most people that I know are artificially intelligent. They just respond. They just react, right? They are programmed large
really
language
interesting.
models, and they have certain niche things that they know. And beyond that, they don't know how to think, right? So most people are already artificially intelligent. And when you look at and you're dealing with AI, it almost is like putting a mirror to your mind, right? Understanding your own interfaces and how you interact. So I don't look at it to particularly solve any problems for me. You know, I look at it to enhance what I'm already doing in whatever capacity, right? So the question becomes for everybody that wants to use this technology and this machine, right? It's the same way why you use a phone, right? You can communicate with people at vast distances instantly, right? Or you have to go send a messenger, or you have to go walk and communicate that message yourself to somebody in person. what does it did? It just enhanced your communication interface,
Mm.
right? Same thing when we get social media. It created a network. You have to at first physically go all around the world and connect with people and network. Now you have a social network, right? To where you can connect with people all across the planet Earth that are in various different global positions. And why do you need that? Because you need that for business, right? You need that just for your own life resources. Because at first, and still to this day, like you have a child that grows up without any networks, right? Or any wealthy networks, it's going to be harder for them later on in life because they don't have those connections. And
Oh,
that
it's
was the
so
point of
hard.
going to college. That was the point of going right to these different, you place your child in this school, right? They grow up
Yeah.
with this kid that later becomes a judge or later becomes a CEO somewhere, right? Those are connections. So when you look at who technology can benefit the most, it's people who normally didn't have that access, right? It's people who normally, those things were kept away from them. So now they can utilize technology to give themselves those resources. The plight of the poor man is a lack of resources, right? So when I look at big corporations, I look at big institutions, what is that gap between that allows them to maintain power as the managerial or the ruling class? It's their
Mm.
resources, it's their access, it's their brain trust, intelligentsia that they have in the world, right? They have the budget so they can hire the smartest people, and that creates a barrier for competition. So if I'm given a smart machine and now I can't hire this person that can do copyright, I can't hire this person that knows about science, I can't hire this somebody else to go do researching and editing and all these things for me because it's too expensive and you don't have the budget, but I can use AI to substitute that. So now I have the same, almost the same amount of resources as a multi-million dollar company, right? The question is not about what AI is what you go use it for,
Mm.
right? Same thing with any
Mm.
piece of technology. You have a mind, but most people don't use it, right? So I always approach things from, the a level of curiosity, right? And I ask myself today, like, what do we even demand anymore? You go back to the early 60s, we had demands, right? We wanted to be in certain spaces, right? We wanted a certain equality. We wanted certain rights. That was our collective demands as a public. We had that easy outcry to understand what we wanted. And when we had that outcry, we had the lack of resources to give it to ourselves, even though we could have looked at each other collectively and decided to just be each other resources. But we decided to look outside of ourselves and say, hey, this is the thing holding us back. We go up to 2000s, right? What was our demands then? I can't even tell you. I don't know. In the early 90s, we had Million Man Marches and we were talking about, liberation and atonement and things of that nature and trying to heal the hood from the things that happened. You had the crack era in the 80s. The 2000s, we were just trying to figure out how to utilize this technology. We stopped having demands. We started being a product of the system, right? So now that human beings have all of this power, and by power, I mean access, resources, democratization of these things that were normally kept out of the hands of the masses,
Yeah.
they don't have a demand for it, right? So if you are a dangerous individual, right? They have hackers that are savants at it, and they're so good they can hack almost any system. They get caught. You gotta keep you away from a computer, right? Sometimes you get banned for life because they know if you get access to this machine, you can do anything you want.
Mm.
If you give a mass population of people access to advanced machinery, right? And that means that that they are so demoralized at this point that they're not going to do anything with it.
Mm.
And you're not afraid of them. So it's funny because these AIs are not even becoming smarter, they're becoming weaker the more people are using them. And people don't even understand that what you're watching is the advancement of these corporations with even more, advanced technology, not people having access to it. So we know for a fact that they're not going to give up access to the technology because they know that they're going to use it for more control and more power, all right, and greater capitalization and efficiency of resources. So the question becomes is why don't we have any demands for how we want to use it? It's because we lack vision. So it's easy for me to see how we can use technology. Let's look at all our problems, right? Our lack of representation in media, right? We can't compete on media scale because it's all controlled by ad dollars. Advertisement got the culture in the lockhold, right? But now we can use technology to create platforms to where we can connect to core fan bases and create subscriptions. So now we can monetize that and then grow at scale media from an independent operation. Without the technology, that's not possible. So I'm not going to complain about the fact that, yes, there's always going to be negative use cases of everything, but that's because the enemy uses it that way. How the way you go use it, right? If there's applications to where I can utilize and create AI sounds and music, why wouldn't I utilize that to create Hertz music that I want to tune to my frequency, right? That's has a customized personal assessment that may be connected to a ring or hardware or something that's keeping me aligned and attuned throughout the day so I can de-stress, right? Because mental health
I
issues are
need
very
that.
high. Right. For me, it's easy to just think of like various use cases because we got so many problems in the world.
Yeah.
The question is not why we'll use it, why wouldn't we use it? Right? That to me is the question. But here's the thing that this is why everybody is so negative about things, is because in their mind, right, is someone else's narrative. Where do you get your narratives about AI? Your attitudes towards AI, the law of attitude, right? When you go into that, your attitude creates your position and your disposition towards things. But your position and disposition towards things were informed, right, by something or someone. And that informing was done by the media. AI is the first technology that has 50 years of media programming before it was released to the public. So everything that we know about it, every attitude that we have is not based on our experience of using it. It's based on the attitude that was informed to us by media, by publications, by scientists, right? Oh, it's going to turn into Terminator, right? It's going to be iRobot. It's going to be, these are imaginations of white men who conjure up crazy ideas about them having this ultimate Armageddon future because they don't really believe in organic intelligence. They don't believe in God. So they don't think about using these machines for godly reasons at all. So I can understand if we allow them to inform our attitude, of course we're going to have a negative position towards it. But if I'm informing my own attitude towards something, I'm just thinking, how can I use it to enhance my position in the world, enhance my power, control, and rulership?
God, that's fascinating. That's really, really, really fascinating. And however we feel about it, it's here and it will continue to be and to grow. When I think of, I guess my thoughts on AI are probably mostly led by Black Mirror.
Yeah.
And watching all the seasons of it and then like being terrified after each episode goes off. You brought up a point that it's so interesting to hear all of the ways that you broke that down. Some of what you were saying, I really think about a lot. It's so powerful the way you phrased it. You were talking about at every kind of juncture, we had an ask, right? And following that trail, coming into the early aughts, that really is significantly where the ask kind of stopped. And perhaps some of that is because Black culture became the leader of pop culture, and maybe there was this thought that leveled things out, or because we were influencing all of the markets in all of the ways that somehow meant there was equity and equality. But from your view, what should the ask be now? What is the ask for our communities? What is the ask culturally for our spirits, for our minds, for existing in a not just still systemically oppressed environment in a multitude of ways, but in many states, a progressively more oppressive systemic system is being built. When I think of Florida, when I think of Texas. So what do we need to ask for right now?
I think that it's less of an ask and it's more of a demand that we should have for ourselves. You know, we are in a political season. Everybody is going to try to vote for the lesser evil, whatever that means to them. And the question is, what are you going to get from that vote? What do you expect from it, right? Do you expect a better quality of life? Do you expect more opportunities, more jobs? Or do you expect that voting for one person is going to lessen the tyrancy of the other? Like, what do we even want from it anymore? We're not actually going for anything. At this point, we're just saying the lesser evil. We're still going to get evil We don't really know what's going to be the lesser, but we think this is the lesser, right? And it's like, what would happen if the same people that utilize their platform to push campaigns for either side every year, where they got all of this influence, power, money, and resources, and they decide, I want to pick one of these two old white men to go vote for? What if they did that to where, they propagated young black males and females, right, that are already doing something and they campaign for them, right? Why don't we see that whatsoever? We have all of this rage when it comes to somebody else being our savior, right? But we have none of that same fever when it comes to us saving ourselves. So for me, I get frustrated because I see it as all fake and everybody's controlled by money, right? And the only thing that we can demand of ourselves at this point is a, collective cooperation, that we have our own agendas because we have all the money, resources, and technology that we need at this point. The thing is, we have to build our own institutions, right, that solve our own problems. And the more that we build on this side, the less we need on that side. So let's start with media, right? I have a high level conversations, right? You mentioned that in the bio, right? Ours is definitely top 10 in the world. Educational platforms in the culture, we're number one, just as far as numbers, subject matter, things of that nature. But me been doing this for almost 10 years now. I haven't had one single person from the black community or white community, brown whatsoever, offer a single hand of assistance in building and scaling this thing out. So I have no demands of them. I have demands of us. So what does that do? And I'm not the only person. I know that that's how all young people that's growing up in these generations, and they look at it like, hey, you got your wealth, you have your money, you got your power, you have your individual success, but it means nothing, right? Because your individual success, you take that and you put yourself in this class, then you separate yourself from everybody else. So now we're celebrating your success while it's doing nothing for us, and you're pouring most of your dollars into another community. Your lawyer, your teams, right? The brands that you spend your money on. We brag all day long about how celebrities or rappers or entertainers have invested in these companies. These are all white companies. I don't see them investing into black companies, and we know we get no funding. So if we don't get funding, build our own vehicles, right? Robert Smith can give $100+ million, whatever, to an HBCU, but also we need to build our own media companies, right? So where's that money being funneled into that? It's easy to do the donation route, right? But what about the investment route, to where we're taking risk on each other to build something that we've never had? So with all of this money, resources, and power and influence that we have at scale, there is no collectiveness whatsoever. We look at hip hop, all of this power, resource, influence. Now they're going at each other. Who cares at the end of the day? So for me, the only demand we can have is on ourselves. What are we going to build with our money, influence, power, and resource? If we're not communicating, creating our own memberships to where we're interconnected, at least the leaders, the people with the influence, the who's, then none of the other things matter. We have to put the sting back in the culture. We have to have science, technology, engineering. The arts is there already. We got the arts, we have the media, we have the entertainment, but what about the mathematicians, right? That's nobody else's responsibility but ours. So we can go complain about all of these things that we see on social media while utilizing our very platform to not solve those problems. And we're not saying you have to be the person, but why not go look at the people who's already doing it and help them scale? Because no other community will leave their heroes out to dry.
Wow. No other communities will leave their heroes out to dry.
Mm-hmm. Our heroes ain't the if I'm gonna just say it like this. When you're safe, that means that they don't believe you're going to create any disruption towards the status quo and what's going on. So they can throw you the brand deals, they can throw you the ad deals, they can allow you in spaces. They will let you become very rich because they know you're not going to use the resources that they gave you against them. So, and maybe that's not your job. Your job maybe is to take some of those resources, network, right, information, know-how, and give that to those that they wouldn't let up. Because your position can never be coveted and can never be safe, right, unless you have reinforcement and power, right? So it's like in Black America, there's two sides of Black America, right? It's the one that is accepted and it's the one that's not. We have all of these trigger words and all of this fake stuff. We talk about DIE, but we have lack of diversity within our own community and representation.
Wow.
So you can't expect somebody outside of our culture to do what we won't do inside our culture. So for me, the demand has to be upon ourselves to where we have to stop being a house that's divided, to where it's like, okay, when are you guys going to integrate with each other? Right? When are you guys going to diversify the representation that you have, right, within your own culture? When are you going to invest in your own systems? You keep complaining about us not doing it, but you don't even do it. And I'm talking about doing it aggressively, right, and purposely. Anytime I meet with these people, they all scared to do anything that matters. And they only support people that they can control. So I understand the gambit in the game, right? That's why we respectfully, independently utilize our creative mind, right? And we utilize the resources and the machinery and the technology every day to do for self. I don't care whether it's AI or social media or the phone or whatever it may be. It ain't about the technology itself. It's about what we can use as a resource to build our own world.
Sweet Jesus. Oh, man. Wow. 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 I'm just creating a little integration space. That was a lot. And that was so exploratory, so profound. The line you said, especially of, it's like the amount of work we have to be really willing and take honor in doing within our own communities, right? Like, and also making space for the understanding that you're doing a deep prophetic work that you may not reap all the benefits of in this lifetime, and it's still honorable and it's still a worthy,
But look what that says about
use
us,
of
right?
self.
Because it's this thing where, the law of reciprocation. You can't expect any bounty from the land that you don't put in, right? If you don't plant the seeds and you don't till the ground and you don't do that work, then you can't expect nothing back from it, right?
Yeah.
But it's this idea that when you do good in the world, do not expect your rewards while you're living. But when you do nothing for the world, you can respect all the return instantly, right? And I think it's this thing to where what it does is it absolves us of the responsibility in assisting those that's doing good work, right? Oh, you should be doing this selfishly. I am, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't also get more resources to scale it, right? It's more so something about everybody around us, not the person, right? Who are we to have the resources to influence the platform and see someone doing a tremendous good and not assist them, right?
Yeah.
And then when that person wants some reward while they're living, like, oh, I thought you was doing this selfishly. I did it till I found out that everybody else was selfish. You know what I mean? So I think, like, I just went to Oakland. I flew out there. My brother, Mr. Fab, he has Thug Therapy, and it's a beautiful event. And I want to see that scale where, it's a free event for the community, mostly men that show up. And you just have these powwow circles of men that talk about whatever's on their mind and talk about tools to help them with their own mental health issues and or problems that they deal with. So I went up there to keynote and speak there, and it was such a beautiful event. And something like that is we talk about mental awareness all day long. We need to have events like that scaled all throughout America.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that should be such an easy funded thing. But we've never seen, ever, a collective resolve for a problem like that. Black men, specifically, I want to speak on. Because, and the reason I like speaking on black men, because I feel like we don't have any representation from like institution or corporate interests whatsoever. Because who the hell wants to empower black men? Right? They look at it as there's to no one's advantage if black men are empowered. And what I mean by that is we have the highest cancer rates, diabetes rates, heart issue rates, high blood pressure, right? Violence, second is suicide, right? Prison populations, you name it. I can keep going. Depression, right? In America, we number one in all those. Yet, I've never seen a march for it. I've never seen a corporate campaign for it.
Yeah.
We're not the face of not one of them ever. So we are always expected to help everyone in a fight while we still have the hardest fight, right? Which is dealing with these issues ourselves.
Absolutely.
So if black men themselves, we have billionaires and decamillionaires and people of influence, power, and knowledge don't put resources to this problem, how can we expect anyone else, right? The rest of the world is never going to prioritize us. We know this for a fact. Unless this becomes something that they can monetize and it benefits their bottom line, they're always going to put that profit over people.
Yeah.
So if, like, we're going back to that demand, if we don't have that demand for ourselves, we can't demand that of anyone else. And that's why, I was supposed to show up for my brothers at New Era Detroit, and I didn't get to make it, and I had to double back and go to Oakland. And New Era Detroit is another, my brother Zeke, they go around the country, and they're like similar to what the Black Panthers would be. They're really in the neighborhoods. They're really creating safety, right, for the neighborhood, and they show up when they need to. Man, that should be funded with tens of millions of dollars. Not even just from anywhere outside, by us, right? We got financial literacy programs, Earn Your Leisure, myself, and other different people that's doing it. Everybody watches it, but who's actually supporting it? Nobody has written some huge check towards it. So when I say the heroes are left out to dry, I mean that, right? When you do things that is saving our people, when you do things that is directly addressing the problems, right, that will have a beneficial trickle effect. Because if you can get the minds of these men together, then the families get better,
Yeah.
right? And now we get to
Yes.
decrease the problems. Now we're trying to decrease the recidivism rate. Now we're trying to create opportunities and jobs and skill building, because financial literacy is only such a small aspect of the problem. There's no jobs, there's no opportunities. Everybody's not going to be a creator on social media, right? Everybody doesn't want to build a personal brand. Everybody, when you take a personal assessment of people, they don't have the characteristics and or traits to do such a thing. So we don't get any funding. So now we should have this high revolutionary push towards that. Revolt is not booming anymore, but that media space is empty. What platform that we can go to that is essential, that we can say, man, this is where I can go and get some meaningful, educational, valuable content that is directly owned by Black media? There is none besides what we're doing, right? At a larger scale, I mean. So once we acknowledge all of these problems exist, right? And we ain't even got into spiritual conversations,
Right.
right? But once we acknowledge all these problems exist and we're not actively, not saying, hey, you need to have your own thing. You need to have, no, we have to have collective things, because that's the
Yeah.
problem. They see you shining in one area and say, oh, he talking financial literacy. Well, let me get my team to start me a program over here. You could have took your resources and helped them build theirs. We don't need 1,000 small
God, that's a good
things.
point.
We need huge institutions to create change. That's real power over time.
That is a great, great point. I'm going to switch you up for a little bit, and I might be taking you to another
That's
area.
okay.
I want to see how this goes.
I can triple task.
So I'm curious. You have shared, especially some of the depth of the practice that is necessary, supportive structures to support purpose and to support mission work on earth is something I really believe in. And I think self-care, it's been gentrified and it's been kind of taken into being on trend and mainstream, this idea of self-care. But I look at it as what is actually necessary for the physical human body, for our physiology, for our brain health, for our spiritual health. We are having a human experience in 3 specific ways individually at all times, which is our mental experience of being human, our emotional experience of being human and spiritual, and then our physical experience of being here and being human. So what do you do for pleasure and delight in your life?
Pleasure and delight. That sounds like a snack company. I live, I do art, I design, I do music on my spare time, I travel, I work out, I spend time with friends, socialize. I think that, I like to eat. I'm a tourist, so, you gotta go through the stomach to get to the heart.
You're a Taurus sun?
Oh, I gotta check the charts. My peoples know. Yeah.
What's the moon and the rising?
I know Virgo is in there. I think Leo and Virgo is in there. So
Okay.
I got a whole foul on myself. I got to go back and read
Okay. Okay. I'm
it.
curious. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's what I do. I think that those are the things that bring me joy. Traveling, eating, creating. Socializing. Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said, "Heaven is money, good homes, friendships of all walks of life." I think about those particular areas, but I enjoy what I do. I enjoy when I'm like, even when it comes to like studying or researching something new, and it excites me to learn something, and then I get excited to teach it. You feel me? That to me is not work that I do for profit. That's work that I do for passion. You feel me? Just because however my brain is wired to enjoy those things, that's what I love to do. Lately
Yeah.
I've been enjoying making music. I've been putting together a new book. I've been enjoying the process of putting that together. The only things that feel like work is when I have to like sell stuff, or sometimes when we're traveling for work, and these different pockets of putting together business processes and systems and meetings and all of that stuff. But I don't live a life where I'm forced to do anything. So I think all of it is enjoyment and delight.
Hmm. I love those answers. And I think that that is a part that, especially for Black men, but absolutely men in general, it's not necessarily this piece that a lot of thought is spent on, and there's not as much value seen in that. But pleasure is what God wants us to know in this reality as
Mm,
well, And I think that there is no fuel quite like joy. If we're going to feel everything else,
yeah.
right? That's the human experience, the challenge, the profound challenge so often we bypass joy because
Hmm.
it's like, well, it's not going to last. It's not going to stay here. I don't want to let myself feel that or get into that. But it's those moments, it's those, the way that it can fill your body that fuels everything else, even if it's just for a moment and just for a second. I really resonate with a lot of what you were saying. Like, my idea of a good time is studying 100% or going on a silent retreat. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm drooling, like, swoon, get me quiet and
Hmm.
alone. And get me with something fascinating that I could research for hours on end. Um, I'm
I mean,
so
don't get me wrong. I could turn up and be outside too sometime.
okay. Yeah,
You know what I'm
you at
saying?
the you
Yeah,
at
I
the
can. Yeah, I
functions.
can vibe for surely. You know what I'm saying? It's just I like to vibe responsibly, so I want to feel like I'm celebrating something when I'm outside.
So what do you do outside? What's your vibes?
I don't know. It depend on you can invite me to a social event or something. I don't have it detailed out like that, but you'd be surprised what I might
You out
pull
there,
up
you
to.
dancing, you
Yeah,
like
I'm
okay,
from Oakland. We might gig a little different. You know what I'm talking about? We might
okay.
we might do a little something. You know what I'm about?
Yeah, yeah,
I be
yeah.
in my own vibe though. So it really depends on my energy when I go out. Cause sometimes I could be introverted, sometimes I could be extra. So sometimes I want to observe, sometimes I want to be in the mix.
Yeah, that I
You feel me?
mean.
Yeah. So I always like to be invited. You invite me, even if I don't show up, you got to invite me. I like having those options.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Might not make it, but thank you for thinking of me.
but keep
Yeah, but keep
thinking
the
about
invites
me.
coming because
Keep
you
thinking
you
of
gonna
me.
invite me on that day where I got the energy. Like, yes, I'm outside. You feel me? I don't believe in like the boxing where you got to be some spiritual yogi floating in the
Yeah.
room. You know what I'm saying? Acting like you just cut off from the world. No, I could be outside and be spiritual too.
Oh,
You feel me?
yes.
Like I totally 100% believe in being in motion. You feel me?
Yeah.
It just has to make sense.
Yeah. I think that's what the deepest truth of kind of the spiritual journey actually is.
Hmm.
It's like having fun with the human. And,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say people would be shocked because a lot of people are aware of all of my different iterations, but yeah, I'd be out.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like for what brings me the most pleasure is taking like ideas and seeing them come to real life and
Yeah.
reality. And I think that's the highest level that when it comes to men specifically, it's like when you aren't able to take a thought out your mind and bring it into reality, and you don't have that orgasmic pleasure of manifesting something, right? That's when you distract yourself to supplement that and find faux pleasure somewhere else,
Yeah.
whether it be drugs, whether it be sex, whether it be socialization, right? Entertaining yourself, numbing yourself, whatever it
Yeah.
is. you're trying to get that pleasure you're not getting from having a well working mind, right? Because our bodies want that, you know what I mean, endorphin. We want that joy. We want that release. So it's like we got to get it somewhere. Hey, bro, you got this idea and you can't do shit. You better at least satisfy me some kind of way. But when it's
Yeah.
physical things are always fleeting. When it's mental, you can accomplish something and that thought can bring you joy a million times, right? But sex only go bring you joy in that moment. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And then you have to have sex again in order to satisfy the flesh again. But things of the mind and the spirit, they can leave you satisfied for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
So that's why accomplishment to me is the highest seeker of pleasure. Being able to take a thought out your mind and bring it in reality. And that to me goes down to the details of, I got a book I'm writing on now about like the laws, different laws of the universe I utilize and live by. And, I was always taught the first law of the universe is motion, second law is order, right? So when people think about the law of attraction, they never really have it deep seated in a formulaic way. And so I always think about, motion is putting yourself into action, going to work. But having order is, gaining traction, right? So you go from action to traction. And then from there, it can go to when you gain so much traction and you're gaining order upon your steps, you produce value. And then that thing that you're chasing starts to come to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is on that road, there becomes responsibility, there becomes accountability, right? It becomes real. And then some people, instead of moving forward and gaining more attraction to attraction, they go to distraction, right? So now I need to distract myself. So now you go to subtraction and taking away from the traction that you gained. So I think about the motion that we have because everybody want to have motion, but it's more important to have order, right? So once you order things in a particular way, you can constantly produce value
Mm.
and you magnetize the things that you want to come to you versus you constantly chasing them. And when you learn to operate in that manner, then you start to have success on a daily basis, right? Not just sometimes, but all the time. And so we have to be careful because the world is trying to attract us. And then that attraction can become our distraction.
Yeah.
Netflix doesn't want you to be successful. It wants you to sit on the couch and watch TV all day, right? The porn people don't want you to have successful relationships. They want you to beat off to whatever they pushing, right?
Yeah.
They don't want you to be focused and gaining traction in life because your success in life represents their failure. You physically eating right and things of that nature, you're not going to the fast food restaurants. You're not buying they unnecessary snacks with fats and things of that nature in it. Now you're going to be sitting there getting yourself right because you're focused about getting your mind, body, and spirit aligned with your goal and your vision. So a focused society, right, is dangerous to these institutions, dangerous to big pharma, right? It's dangerous to these media companies. It's dangerous to these advertisement companies. So they're directly incentivized to keep you distracted.
Yeah.
So we don't even believe in, like when we talk about joy and pleasure, we don't talk about it from a sense of accomplishment. We always talk about it from a sense of distraction.
Mm.
So for me, that's why I
Absolutely.
think about like, nah, like if you see me doing something successful, that has to be my pleasure.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. That's so good. And to a piece that you were speaking of, in terms of like, I think especially when it comes to sexual energy, which our culture and our society is just so led by, but in such an empty and hollow way so
Yeah.
often, it's like any energy can be transmuted for your good and for your highest good. So any energy that's present can be utilized and
Mm-hmm.
harnessed for creation's sake. And
Yeah.
it's really like, what are you creating? What are you using that charge for? Even if you feel a charge with another person or a charge towards something or an experience, like the energy is real. So you're
Yeah.
feeling the energy and the energetic potential of the movement inside of you. And how can you come into a harnessing of that for
Mm-hmm.
something that's advancing?
I think like that energy is like, think about it. How much do we only use the word lust when it comes to like physical sexual attraction, right? We don't use it when it comes to manifestation. We don't use it when it comes to business. We don't use it when it comes to success,
Yeah.
right? But when we talk about lust, we know it's such a charging and powerful pulling energy,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if we were to say, how much do we lust, you know what I'm saying, success? How much do we lust, manifestation and the creation of things that's in our mind, right? It doesn't almost even sound right to say that, right? But what we're doing is the energy that's in that word, when we think about it, it's almost something that we can see,
Yeah.
right? Like we know what lust looks like, or we use it in a negative, bloodlust, right? But we don't use it in a positive whatsoever. But everything has a negative and a positive polarity. That's the law of polarity.
Yeah.
So I think that people don't utilize that energy of lust, that want for something, that attraction that we have for something, that energy that pulls us. We don't use it in a powerful and positive way whatsoever. We only use it in these things where we're particularly conjuring our lower desires and not our higher ones, right? You can lust for a better world. I want it so much. I need that right now. And that energy pulls me towards it. You can lust for a better self. But, being attracted to something and loving something is different, because the lust may start it off, but the love keeps it going, right? So I think that we even need to use some of these terms when we talk about what we want to produce in the world, right? I would love for a better world, right? Are we in love with having a better world? Are we in love with having our better selves, right? Most of the time, we only have a lust for things, right? But we don't have a love for them. We want them, and then when we get them, we don't take care of them, or we don't treat them right. So I think that a lot of ourselves have sought our higher selves at different points in our journey, but it was a lust. It wasn't a love.
Yeah.
You feel me? We got there for a moment, but did we maintain it? You worked out that day, but then the next day you didn't, right? And then you didn't go back again. So for me, love is a frequency that you maintain consistently, right? I love to say what you do frequently becomes your frequency. That's my law of frequency. So I think that as you operate, when you're talking about sexual orgasmic energy, right, there is no greater orgasmic energy than really saying, I had this in my mind. I brought it from this dimension to that one, because it lets me know my mind works, right? It lets me know my power. It lets me know my willfulness, right? And I think that when we operate in that manner, then we correctly aligned.
Perfect. Amazing. Powerful. I had the chance to be on 19 Keys podcast, one of them. And so that will be coming forward at some point in the near future.
Manifest House.
Manifest House, which we had a great conversation. So I'm excited to share that with the world. At the end of every episode, I like to ask the guests to share what I call soul work. So it's something that can be really savored and used, and kind of a guidance for processing and integrating this conversation until I meet everyone listening again next week. So what is some soul work you'd like to leave with our audience?
I would go back to the original point that I made about finding at least 30 minutes to an hour to just sit by yourself. And do not block any thoughts. Do not take them out. Allow whatever comes up to be in your mind. Just allow your mind to process. I think in this fast-paced world that we live in every day, we don't have enough processing time, right? And that, to me, whether you can go in that room by yourself and you can turn off the lights or you can leave them on, there's no sound. You can be sitting in your backyard with your shoes off, right, grounding with the sun, and it's just listening, right? There's a book called Stillness Speaks. I remember I read that when I was young, and I love that book so much because I was able to always find stillness no matter what place I was at, no matter how chaotic the world. And it was something simple as looking at a stop sign and a pole that doesn't move, and you can be in a crowd of everyone. And then as you connect to the stillness of this pole, it connects to the stillness in you. You feel me? And I believe that allows us to really connect, as I said before, to that God within, right? Where you have control over yourself. You're not controlled by anything. And oftentimes, when people try to find control in chaotic environments, they self-sabotage to try to give themselves a sense of control. But I think a better practice is just stillness. Do not move. That is one thing that you can control. Be in silence, right? Find that time to yourself and allow the things that you learn, right? Allow the person that you really are, right? To sit still within you so you can integrate between your private and your public. You can integrate between your light and your shadow self. Then make a move from that place of stillness.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Check out 19 Keys everywhere he's at. Start on Instagram at 19 Keys, High Level Conversations on YouTube, and you'll be connected to all the pathways from there. As always, thank you for joining. Take some time, leave a 5-star review, write me a little rating if you would, and I'll be back next week. Namaste.